The routine maintenance of Space Station Beta should have been boring. Captain James Walker had done this 100 times before, guiding his small repair vessel through the quiet darkness of Earth's orbit. But today was different. Today would change human history forever. "Sir, there's something weird on the long-range scanners," said Tom, the sensor operator. His eyes were fixed on the glowing screen in front of him. Walker floated over to Tom's station, his movements smooth in the zero gravity. "Define weird." "It's big, sir. Really big. And it's not one of ours." Tom's fingers flew across his console, bringing up more detailed scans. It just appeared out of nowhere, about 50,000 kilometers out. "Nothing we've ever seen moves like that." Walker was about to respond when a bright light filled the bridge. When it faded, a tall figure stood before them. It looked almost human, except for its silvery skin and completely black eyes. "Greetings, humans," the figure said in perfect English. "I am First Speakerly of the Galactic Council. We have been watching your development with great interest." The bridge crew sat in stunned silence. Walker found his voice first. "I'm Captain James Walker of the Earth Space Service. Welcome to Earth Space." He was proud that his voice didn't shake. The alien smiled, or at least Walker thought it was a smile. "Your species has achieved spaceflight and begun to establish orbital installations. It is time for formal contact." Over the next few hours, more alien ships appeared. They were beautiful things, all curved lines and glowing surfaces. Walker's repair ship looked like a child's toy next to them. The aliens scanned everything. Their devices hummed and blinked, recording data about human technology. Walker noticed their expressions changing as they worked, from polite interest to barely hidden amusement. "Fascinating," said one of their scientists, looking at the ship's defensive systems. "You still use physical projectiles for defense." "How quaint." Walker felt his face grow hot. "Our railguns are highly effective," he said. "Of course they are," the alien said, in the same tone adults use with children. "But surely you'll want to upgrade to proper energy weapons once you join the galactic community." The aliens set up a temporary base on the space station. More humans arrived. Military officers, scientists, and government officials. Everyone wanted to see the visitors from the stars. Walker watched as the aliens showed off their technology. They had weapons that fired beams of pure energy, shields that could stop almost anything, and ships that could fold space itself. Next to that, humanity's best technology looked like stone tools. "The Council has decided," First Speaker Lee announced to the gathered humans. "Your species will be invited to send representatives to the Grand Assembly. There we can begin the process of uplifting your civilization to proper galactic standards." The humans around Walker cheered. He cheered too, but something bothered him. It was the way the aliens looked at Earth's weapons during their inspection. Not with fear or respect, but with amusement, like finding a stick being used as a sword. Later, as the aliens prepared to leave, Walker overheard two of them talking. "Can you believe they still use projectile weapons?" one said. "Actual pieces of metal thrown through space. They'll learn better soon enough," the other replied. "Though I must admit, their determination to reach space with such primitive technology is impressive." Walker thought about the railguns on his ship. Simple, reliable weapons that fired chunks of metal at incredible speeds. The aliens might laugh, but Walker had seen those guns punch through meteors. There was something to be said for simple solutions. As the alien ships disappeared into fold space, Walker looked at his crew. "Well," he said, "things are certainly going to get interesting." He had no idea just how right he was. The galaxy thought it was reaching down to lift up another primitive species. Instead, they would soon learn that sometimes the simplest weapons were the most dangerous, and that it was a bad idea to laugh at human ingenuity. The first contact was complete. Humanity was about to join the galactic stage, and their primitive guns were coming with them. Ambassador Thomas Reed had seen many impressive things in his diplomatic career, but nothing prepared him for the Galactic Council's central station. The massive structure hung in space like a giant metal flower, its petals stretching for kilometers in every direction. Each petal housed the embassy of a different alien species. Quite a sight, isn't it? Mark Anderson, Earth's military advisor, stood beside him at the viewing window of their transport ship. Makes our biggest space station look like a garden shed. Reed nodded, trying to hide his nervousness. Today, he would present Earth's case for joining the galactic community. Everything had to be perfect. The human delegation was led to their quarters, small but comfortable rooms that had been quickly modified to suit human needs. Reed noticed that even these basic accommodations were far beyond Earth's current technology level. "The Council will see you in 2 hours," their alien guide announced. "Please prepare your presentation." Reed spent those 2 hours reviewing his notes. The presentation would cover Earth's history, culture, and military capabilities. He knew the military part would be tricky. The aliens had made it clear they found human weapons primitive. The council chamber itself was enormous. Thousands of alien representatives sat in rising tiers around a central speaking platform. The ceiling was a perfect replica of the galaxy, slowly spinning above them. "Presenting the delegation from Earth," a voice announced. Reed walked to the platform, trying to look confident despite the countless alien eyes watching him. "Honorable members of the Council," he began, "Earth thanks you for this opportunity." The cultural presentation went well. The aliens seemed genuinely interested in Earth's art, music, and literature. But then came the military portion. "Our primary space defense consists of ships equipped with magnetic accelerator weapons, what we call railguns," Reed explained as images appeared above the platform. "These weapons can accelerate projectiles to incredible speeds, making them highly effective in space combat." A murmur of laughter rippled through the chamber. Reed saw several council members whispering to each other, smirking. "You mean you throw pieces of metal at your enemies?" one council member asked, not bothering to hide his amusement. "How do you expect such primitive weapons to compete with modern energy shields?" "Our calculations show that kinetic weapons are highly effective," Reed started, but another council member cut him off. "Perhaps we should show them what real weapons look like," the alien said. "For educational purposes, of course." The next hour was a demonstration of alien military technology. Energy beams that could slice through battleship armor, shields that could absorb the power of a small sun, weapons that could bend space itself. Reed maintained his diplomatic smile, but he felt his face growing hot. Next to him, Mark Anderson watched everything with quiet interest, taking notes. "As you can see," First Speaker Lee said, "your current military technology is somewhat behind galactic standards. But don't worry, we will help you advance beyond such primitive methods." "Thank you for the generous offer," Reed replied diplomatically. "Earth looks forward to learning from the Council's experience." As they left the chamber, Reed noticed Anderson smiling slightly. "What's so amusing?" Reed asked. "They're so proud of their energy weapons and shields," Anderson said quietly. "But did you notice? Every single one of their defensive systems is designed to stop energy attacks. Nobody uses physical projectiles anymore." He paused. "They've forgotten one of the most basic rules of physics. You can't stop mass with energy alone." Reed thought about that. He remembered the railgun tests he'd witnessed, how the projectiles had torn through reinforced armor like it was paper. "You think they're vulnerable?" he asked. "Let's hope we never have to find out," Anderson replied. "But if we do," he left the sentence unfinished. As their transport took them back to their quarters, Reed watched the massive station through the window. The Council might laugh at Earth's primitive weapons now, but Anderson's words kept echoing in his mind. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways, and sometimes being underestimated was an advantage. 3 months after Earth joined the Galactic Council, the first reports of the Drachnid attacks reached the central station. At first, they were just rumors, isolated incidents on the outer rim of Council space, but soon, The truth became impossible to ignore. Mark Anderson sat in the human embassy, reading the latest reports. Another council colony had fallen. The pattern was always the same. The Drachnid ships would appear suddenly, their advanced shields making them nearly invulnerable to the Council's energy weapons. "How many colonies is that now?" Ambassador Reed asked, looking over Anderson's shoulder. 7 in the past month," Anderson replied. "And 3 military outposts. The Council's weapons can't get through their shields." The emergency council meeting that followed was chaos. Representatives from dozens of species argued about how to respond to the threat. The massive chamber, usually so orderly, now buzzed with fear and anger. "Our best energy cannons do nothing," one representative shouted. "The Drachnid shields absorb or reflect everything we throw at them." First Speaker Lee called for order. "We are the most advanced civilization in known space. We will find a solution." Anderson stood up. "Earth has experience with shield penetration. Perhaps we could." "Please," a council member interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. "This is hardly the time to discuss primitive weapons. We need real solutions." Anderson sat down slowly, sharing a look with Reed. They had both noticed something in the attack reports, something the Council, in their technological arrogance, had missed. Later, in the human embassy, Anderson spread out the combat footage he'd collected. "Look here," he said, pointing to a screen. "When debris hits their ships, the shields flare. They're struggling to stop physical objects." Reed leaned closer, "Just like you predicted. Their defenses are optimized for energy weapons." "We could help," Anderson said. "Our railguns." A loud alarm cut him off. The station's emergency system was broadcasting. Another attack was underway. This time, it was closer to home. The Drachnid had struck a major trading hub just 2 systems away from the Council Center. The live feeds showed scenes of destruction. Sleek Council ships firing uselessly at the invaders, their energy beams dissipating harmlessly against the Drachnid shields. "Evacuate the civilian population," First Speaker Lee ordered. But it was too late. The trading hub fell within hours. In the aftermath, Anderson received a message from Earth. A small human merchant ship had witnessed the attack. The captain's report confirmed what Anderson had suspected. The Drachnid shield showed signs of strain when hit by ordinary space debris. "We have to make them listen," Reed said, reading the report. "Next time could be worse." But the Council remained stubborn. They doubled down on their energy weapons, making them more powerful, more advanced. Nothing worked. The Drachnid shields simply adapted. More colonies fell. More ships were lost. The Council's mighty fleet, with all its advanced technology, could not stop the invaders. Then came the news everyone had feared. The Drachnid had taken a Council core world. Millions were dead or missing. The Council's energy weapons, the pride of their civilization, had proven useless. Anderson stood at the embassy window, watching ships rush past as civilians fled the growing threat. Next to him, Reed held a message from Earth. Their military was ready to help, if only the Council would listen. "They'll have to ask us soon," Anderson said quietly. "They're running out of options." "Will it be too late?" Reed asked. Anderson looked at the latest casualty reports. "For many, it already is." As if to emphasize his words, another emergency alert sounded through the station. The Drachnid had been spotted in a nearby system. Their advance seemed unstoppable. But Anderson knew better. Sometimes the simplest solution was the best solution, and Earth's primitive weapons were about to teach the galaxy a lesson about the dangers of underestimating old technology. The only question was, how many more would die before the Council swallowed its pride and asked for help? The Galactic Council's central station shook as another explosion lit up the space around it. Through the massive observation windows, Ambassador Reed watched the Drachnid ships tear through the Council's defensive line like it wasn't even there. How did they get so close? A Council member screamed, their usual dignity forgotten in panic. The answer was simple. The Council's mighty fleet, with all its advanced energy weapons, couldn't stop them. The Drachnid shields absorbed or reflected every beam, every plasma bolt, every energy pulse thrown at them. First Speaker Lee stood in the center of the council chamber, his silver skin pale with stress. "Deploy the new resonance cannons," he ordered. "They cannot possibly resist weapons of that power." But they could, and they did. The resonance cannons, the pride of council technology, fired brilliant beams of pure energy at the Drachnid ships. The beams splashed harmlessly against their shields, like water on rock. "Sir," a junior officer burst into the chamber. "The civilian evacuation. It's not going fast enough. We need more time." Mark Anderson watched from his position near the human embassy's communication station. He had been sending regular updates to Earth, knowing what was coming. Now he received the message he had been waiting for. The first Earth Expeditionary Fleet was ready. They just needed the Council's permission to enter their space. The station shook again, harder this time. Multiple hull breaches in sectors 7 through 12. The station's AI announced calmly. Emergency shields failing in those sectors. Reed looked at Anderson. "Now." Anderson nodded. "Now." Reed stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos in the chamber. "The Earth fleet can be here in 20 minutes through our emergency fold space corridor. They're armed with weapons that can penetrate Drachnid shields." "Your primitive projectile weapons," a council member scoffed, even as another explosion rocked the station. "This is hardly the time for jokes." First Speaker Lee raised his hand for silence. On the main display, a Drachnid ship was methodically destroying a council cruiser, the crew's desperate transmissions cutting off one by one. "What makes you think your weapons will work when our most advanced technology has failed?" Lee asked, but there was less contempt in his voice now, less certainty. "Because," Anderson said, stepping forward, "your energy weapons and their shields are two sides of the same technology. They've evolved together. But our weapons are different. They don't try to overpower shields. They simply go through them." Another explosion. Closer this time. "Emergency shields failing in sectors 13 through 15, the AI announced. The council chamber erupted in arguments. Some wanted to accept Earth's help immediately. Others insisted it was better to die than rely on primitive weapons. A final explosion rocked the station. The main viewport cracked, emergency force field snapping into place just in time. "Multiple Drachnid ships on approach," the AI reported. "Estimate 12 minutes until they reach firing position for the station's core." First Speaker Lee looked at the destruction around him, at the burning ships and broken defenses. Then he looked at Reed and Anderson, who waited calmly amid the chaos. "Send the authorization," Lee said finally. "Allow the Earth fleet to enter Council space." Reed immediately transmitted the codes. Anderson was already on the comm to the fleet's commander. "Help is coming," Reed announced to the chamber. "But I suggest you all hold on to something. Our weapons may be primitive, but they tend to be dramatic." As the council members scrambled to secure themselves, Anderson smiled slightly. The galaxy was about to learn why you should never underestimate human ingenuity. The Drachnid were coming, confident in their impenetrable shields and unstoppable advance. But so was Earth's fleet, and they were bringing guns to an energy fight. The Earth fleet appeared exactly where Anderson said it would, 11 minutes after the Council's authorization. They weren't the sleek, glowing ships the Council was used to. These vessels were blocky, practical, and bristling with what looked like long metal tubes. Admiral Elizabeth Stone's voice came through clear on the Council's communication system. "This is Earth Fleet Command. We are in position. All civilian ships, please clear the combat zone." The Council members watched in tense silence as the human ships moved into formation. The Drachnid vessels, nearly twice their size, continued their approach toward the station. "Those tubes," one council member whispered to another, "are those their primitive weapons?" They were about to find out. "All ships, weapons free," Admiral Stone commanded. "Show them what human ingenuity can do." The first shot came from Stone's flagship. The railgun fired with a burst of electromagnetic energy, launching a tungsten rod at 30 kilometers per second. The council members watched, expecting the projectile to bounce off the drachnid shields like everything else had. It didn't bounce. The rod punched through the shield like it wasn't there, tearing through the drachnid ship's hull. The alien vessel spun from the impact, venting atmosphere and debris into space. By the stars, First Speaker Lee breathed. Maximum fire rate. Stone ordered. All ships, engage your designated targets. What followed was unlike anything the Council had ever seen. The human ships unleashed a storm of metal. Railguns and coil guns fired in continuous volleys, filling space with hypervelocity projectiles. The drachnid shields, so effective against energy weapons, might as well have been paper. How? A council scientist demanded, watching another drachnid ship split apart under the barrage. Their shields are the most advanced we've ever seen. Anderson smiled. Energy shields stop energy weapons, but they're not designed to handle mass. Our projectiles are moving so fast that by the time the shields react, the rounds are already through. Simple physics, Reed added. You can't stop mass with energy alone. Not without a lot more power than any shield can generate. The drachnid tried to fight back. Their energy weapons lashed out at the human ships, but Earth vessels had their own tricks. Layers of ablative armor absorbed the beams, while magnetic fields deflected the worst of the plasma weapons. They're retreating, someone shouted. Indeed, the remaining drachnid ships were turning away, their formation broken. Several tried to jump to fold space, but precisely aimed human projectiles knocked out their drive systems. Pursue and destroy, Admiral Stone ordered. Don't let them warn their fleet about our weapons. The Earth ships accelerated after the fleeing drachnid, their guns still firing. In less than an hour, it was over. The space around the Council station was littered with broken drachnid ships, their mighty shields useless against humanity's primitive weapons. In the Council chamber, there was complete silence. First Speaker Lee turned to Reed and Anderson. He paused, swallowing his pride. We may have been hasty in dismissing your military technology. The drachnid will be back, Anderson said. With their main fleet, we should prepare. How? Lee asked. We cannot refit our entire fleet with your weapons in time. You don't have to, Reed replied. Earth's factories are already producing weapon systems that can be mounted on Council ships. Simple, effective, and compatible with your power systems. Primitive weapons, a Council member muttered, but this time there was no mockery in the voice. Only wonder. Admiral Stone's image appeared on the main display. Council station. This is Earth fleet. Area is secure. Request permission to establish a defensive perimeter. Granted, Lee said quickly. And thank you. As the Council members watched the human ships take up protective positions around the station, Anderson turned to Reed. Still think they're laughing at our guns? He asked quietly. Reed looked at the debris field that had once been the invincible drachnid ships. No, he said. I don't think anyone will be laughing at human weapons ever again. 2 weeks after the battle at the Council station, the massive construction base that once built energy weapon arrays were busy installing railguns and coilgun systems. Human engineers worked alongside Council technicians, teaching them the art of kinetic warfare. Anderson walked through one of the construction bays, watching as a Council battlecruiser received its new weapons. The ship's sleek lines were now broken by the long barrels of railguns, but no one was complaining about aesthetics anymore. How many ships have we modified? Reed asked, joining him on the observation deck. 50 so far, Anderson replied. Another 100 in progress. The Council's manufacturing capabilities are impressive when they put their minds to it. A group of Council engineers huddled around a human technician, watching intently as she explained the principles of electromagnetic acceleration. Their earlier disdain for primitive technology had been replaced by keen interest. Admiral Stone reports the drachnid main fleet is massing, Reed said quietly. Intelligence suggests they're planning a major offensive to avenge their losses here. Anderson nodded. Let them come. This time we'll be ready. The council had changed in the past 2 weeks. The chamber that once echoed with mockery of human weapons now hosted daily briefings on kinetic warfare tactics. First Speaker Lee himself attended every session, asking detailed questions about projectile velocities and impact angles. Administrator, a council technician, called out to Anderson, "We've completed the modifications to the defensive platforms. Would you like to inspect them?" The massive space stations that guarded the council's core worlds now bristled with human-designed weapon systems. Their energy weapons hadn't been removed. Instead, they worked in concert with the new railguns, creating a defense network that could handle any threat. "The Drachnid are entering the outer systems." Admiral Stone's voice came through the station's comm system. "All ships, battle stations." This time, there was no panic in the council chamber. The combined human council fleet moved into position with practiced precision. Weeks of drilling had forged them into an effective fighting force. The Drachnid fleet emerged from fold space exactly where intelligence said they would. Their ships were larger this time, their shields modified, probably expecting another energy weapon assault. They weren't expecting what happened next. The defense platforms opened fire first, their railguns launching salvos of tungsten rods at the Drachnid fleet. The modified council ships followed, their new weapons blazing. Even their energy weapons proved more effective now, timed to hit just after kinetic impacts disrupted the enemy shields. "Look at their formation," Anderson said, watching the battle display. "They're breaking apart already." The Drachnid had expected to face the same ineffective energy weapons. Instead, they found themselves under attack by weapons their shields couldn't stop, fired from ships that knew exactly how to use them. "All ships, press the advantage," Stone ordered. "Don't let them regroup." The combined fleet moved forward, their guns never stopping. Drachnid ships fell one after another, their advanced shields useless against the storm of hypersonic metal tearing through them. In the council chamber, the representatives watched in amazement as the supposedly invincible Drachnid fleet was systematically torn apart. "They're retreating," Reeve announced, reading the tactical display. "Their remaining ships are jumping to fold space." Less than half the Drachnid fleet escaped. The rest floated in pieces around the battlefield, a testament to the effectiveness of primitive human weapons. First Speaker Lee stood in the center of the chamber, his expression solemn. "Let this be a lesson," he said. "We thought we had reached the pinnacle of military technology. We believed our energy weapons and shields made us invincible. We were wrong." Anderson watched as recovery ships began collecting debris from the battle. Already, council scientists were eager to study the wreckage, looking for ways to improve their own designs. "Sometimes," Reed said quietly, "the old ways are the best ways." The council had learned its lesson. Never again would they laugh at human weapons. The age of pure energy weapons was over. A new era had begun, one where humanity's primitive technology would help defend the galaxy. And somewhere out in space, the retreating Drachnid fleet carried a message back to their leaders. The galaxy had changed. The era of impenetrable shields was over. Humanity had changed the rules of war. 1 year after the first Drachnid attack on the council station, the great chamber was filled once again. This time, not for an emergency meeting, but for a celebration. The formal ceremony to recognize Earth's full membership in the council was unlike any before it. Where once humans had stood alone, now representatives from every council species crowded around them, eager to show their support. Ambassador Reed stood on the speaking platform, looking out at the gathered delegates. Next to him, Mark Anderson wore his new uniform. Director of Joint Military Development for the Council Armed Forces. Above them, the Galactic display showed hundreds of green dots representing the combined fleet's positions. There were no red dots showing Drachnid activity. Not anymore. 1 year ago, Reed began, we stood in this chamber as outsiders. Our weapons were called primitive. Our technology was dismissed as outdated. He paused, letting his words sink in. Today, those same primitive weapons have helped secure peace across Council space. The chamber, once filled with mocking laughter at human technology, now nodded in agreement. Many of the delegates wore small pins shaped like railgun rounds, a new symbol of respect for Earth's contribution. First Speaker Lee rose from his seat. "Earth has taught us a valuable lesson," he said, "one that will be remembered for generations to come. We have become so focused on advancing our technology that we forgot the fundamental principles that made that technology work." Anderson stepped forward. "The integration of human kinetic weapons with Council energy systems has created something new," he said. "Not primitive, not advanced, but effective. We've learned from each other." On the massive screens around the chamber, images showed the new combined fleet. Council ships now carried both energy weapons and railguns. Human vessels sported energy shields alongside their traditional armor. It was a perfect blend of both worlds' technologies. The Drachnid thought their shields made them invincible. Reed continued. The Council thought energy weapons were the peak of military technology. Both were wrong. True strength comes not from having the most advanced technology, but from being willing to use every tool available. In the audience, technical teams who had once sneered at primitive projectile weapons now eagerly discussed the latest developments in kinetic weapon design. Several Council species had already started developing their own variations on human weapons, adding their unique insights to the technology. Earth's membership in the Council is not just a political alliance, First Speaker Lee announced. It is a recognition that progress doesn't always mean complexity. Sometimes, the simple solution is the best solution. As if to emphasize his words, a demonstration played on the screens, a new hybrid weapon system that combined human railgun technology with Council energy focusing techniques. The result was more powerful than either technology alone. "We thought we were coming to teach you," Lee said, turning to the human delegation. "Instead, you taught us. You taught us not to mistake complexity for superiority. You taught us that sometimes the old ways endure for a reason." The ceremony concluded with the official installation of Earth's permanent embassy in the Council station. The once bare walls now displayed images of human history, including pictures of ancient cannons alongside modern railguns, showing the evolution of projectile weapons. Later, at the celebration reception, Reed found Anderson standing by a window, watching ships pass by. "Quite a change from when we first arrived," Reed said. Anderson nodded. "Now when they look at our ships, they don't see primitive weapons. They see the technology that saved their civilization." "And what do you see?" Reed asked. Anderson smiled. "I see a future where we learn from each other, where primitive and advanced are just words, and what matters is what works." Outside the window, a Council ship passed by, its new railguns gleaming alongside its energy weapons. It was a perfect symbol of this new era, one where humanity's primitive ingenuity had changed the face of galactic warfare forever. The Council had learned their lesson. They would never again mistake simplicity for weakness, and they would never, ever laugh at human guns again.